Beautiful.
And
Thank you, Patrick. All right, so we have the joy and the honor and the privilege and the anticipation of hearing from Stephanie. And I believe, Neil, you probably know Stephanie as well or better than anybody present. Do you want to say a few words about how you know or what you know about Stephanie and let the rest of us in on some secrets of Stephanie's?
Yes, thank you. Uh, known Stephanie for years through the Sufi organization, but she's much broader than that. A professor emeritus at Johnson County Community College. She specialized in visual communication, which seems to be just ideal for the way you present yourself today online. And you can see more about her and her uh, gatherings at online gatherings at stephanienuresabato.com. And so I can't recommend her any better than for world peace and understanding. She's a world traveler and traveled to so many countries, has a broad experience and a tremendous group of friends. So Stephanie, take it away.
Well, that was personal and fabulous, Neil. Thank you very much. Stephanie, oh, and everybody, if you want to see the beauty of Stephanie front and center, then here's a suggestion. Go up to the top right of your screen, and you have two choices, speaker view and gallery view. If you click on speaker view, you'll get Stephanie and the beauty of Stephanie front and center. And it's almost, not quite as, but almost as good as being there. So I would suggest that you do that. And that's much more interesting than this little postage stamp size of Stephanie. So Stephanie, we're thrilled to have you. We are honored. Thank you so much. And as Neil said, take it away.
Thank you. I do want to say hello to all the friends from around the world that have taken the opportunity to join us. And so I know we have some friends from the Netherlands, from Turkey, from Italy, where else? From North, South, East, and West in the United States. And I just, this isn't our usual meeting time, but I do appreciate you joining us. And I do think that this is topical, and it is very much in line with the sequence of classes that we have been doing. And of course, I'd like all the people for the Center of Universal Oneness to feel as free to join us, because my classes are open to anyone that wants to come to them, and we're doing them online in this kind of format. So let's just take a moment to turn within and feel the light and the love in our hearts, as if we're entering the most sacred of sanctuaries. And of course, that may be a place that's familiar to you, or it could be nature, a place in nature. Some place that gives you that feeling of love and light and deep solace. When I talked to Barb in the beginning about speaking to all of you, I thought, first of all, let me ask, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, from Bosnia too, we have a friend. Love you. Yasmin, Gabriella. You know, it was timely. We were just going through a racial divide in our country, but I think that spread throughout the world. George Floyd had just lost his life. I think we were all kind of shocked and horrified by it, and of course the sequence of events that followed after that. And my immediate thought was to talk about understanding and forgiveness. And as it evolved, it came to me that there are these phases, just as in healing, we have phases that move us towards forgiveness. And so the topics, and I'll try to draw your attention to every time I'm transitioning, I thought, first of all, judgment judgments arise. Would we all agree with that? When something happens, we feel it somehow inside of ourselves, and we feel a kind of judgment about it. And then we maybe grapple with it, and we wrestle with ourselves, and we want to understand things better. And then perhaps, if we're with the grace of God, we can fall into a place of forgiveness, because we know that our judgments and we know that our lack of understanding can create pain and disharmony within. And how can there ever be peace in the world if we're not peaceful within? So I'm reading, and then I'm going back and forth. I'll be happy to present the paper, to circulate it. It'll be posted on our website, and I'll let Mickey and Barb know that, because I'll post this PDF in a PDF form for you to read over yourselves. So first, as we go into judgment, and I'm reading mostly, not always, and I'll try to note that, from the teachings of a Sufi master by the name of Hazrat Inayat Khan. He was born in the late part of the 1800s, and he lived until 1927. We just celebrated his birthday, actually, a few days ago, July 5th. But he was a great master of thought, and he was a complete universal being in his thinking. He drew upon, in his own experience, the different religions in India, which are vast. And if anyone can say anything about India, there's extreme religious tolerance for the most part. We've seen divisions that are made for political reasons. And interestingly enough, this paper begins with this word, politics, which were once based upon morals and spiritual ideals, have now commercialism as their central theme. Now, remind you, this was being taught in the early part of the 20th century. So that he says that, do we see much evolution since that time? I don't. We still have commercialism as a central theme. He says, alliance between nations exists for the interest of each. Therefore, those who are friends in one situation turn to enemies in another occasion. Sometimes we see that in our own lives. My Tibetan friends, when I was living in Tibetan refugee camps, would always say, look at the people that you feel are your worst enemy. Those people will become your best friends. We have the most to learn from people like that. And often it was very true. You know, and what a wonderful way to think of it. Don't just immediately cut that person out. They have something to teach you. So then Murshid goes on. I call him Murshid. That's an honorific title of a teacher. Murshid says, for there's no moral ideal to hold humanity together in a bond, except now, and true now as ever, except the treaties for the protection of one's own interest. We see that happening before us. I've been reading, by the way, a very interesting paper, which I'll also share, by Dr. Larry Brilliant. He is an epidemiologist, and he also a great spiritual being. He was a student of Neem Karoli Baba in India, but he was the person that they credit with the eradication of smallpox. So he knows of what he speaks, and he was interviewed in Wire magazine about the pandemic and also about the political implications that are arising out of it, and who's going to get the vaccines first and who's not. And, you know, you can see layers and layers. All right, so back to Murshid's words. Today, people think that to make laws is the work of intellectual people. This brings constant disappointments, both to nations and to communities. The lack of order and peace throughout the world today, one may say, is caused by the want of law, which must come from God. The want of law, which must come from God. One of my teachers always would say there's a much higher law than man or woman or humans, whatever you want to say. It's the law of God. You know, I went to Catholic school, and they really do a lot of things to tell you these things you should do and these things you shouldn't do. My hand would be like this when the priest would start in. And I'd say, wait a minute. So I was doing dialectics with them, you know, debate. It's like, okay, you mean to tell me if this happens, then I'm going to go to hell? And they'd say, that's what the doctrine believes. And I'd say, I don't give you the right to tell me what's right or wrong. I know that inside of me. So check within yourself. Let your conscience be your guide. And if you're married, your husband or wife might help you along the way. So Murshid goes on to say that this does bring constant disappointments to just put this matter of law into the hands of only certain people. You yourself in your community have your own maybe code of ethics and justice and judgment. That's okay, as long as you all agree and harmonize around it. So Anayat Khan goes on to say, the lack of order and peace throughout the world today, one may say, is caused by the want of the law, which must come from God, from the divine source. People are too small to be able to find the solution of the problems of the world. That is the work of the perfect wisdom, which is found in a personality, capital P. And that personality without limitations, with which the human personality cannot be compared. We have our limitations, we have our filters. This is very important to remember. This is an important thing to remember as we move to understanding and even forgiveness. We are quite small. We have a very small perspective. Doesn't mean we have to remain in that small view. We can take steps to broaden our view. We'll talk about that. There's this saying that's given, it's a Sufi saying, and Anayat Khan quotes it, and it says, in the drop, the sea is as small as the drop, and in the sea, a drop is as large as the sea. So we have to ask ourselves, are we identifying with the one drop that arises out of the sea, or are we identifying with the sea, the drop that merges with the sea? Where's our perspective? Is it from a limited scope of view or a larger point of view? Can we get back? You know, in the Native American tradition, they talk about little mouse. Little mouse can only see before its nose, but the hawk gets a big perspective. Which perspective do you choose? And maybe we undulate, but we can train each other. I might need a timekeeper because I could go on, and I know you have limited time, but I'm going to try to be quick. You cannot always judge a thing from the action. A judge must know what is behind the action. And when a person has arrived at this stage of judgment, then one never dares to form an opinion, to judge. And Jesus Christ himself taught us, whoever is without fault, it is that person's place to accuse or to punish. It teaches a great lesson. Even to learn justice, it is not necessary that we should be ready to judge and instantly express our judgment or our opinion. You know, it's better to maybe take some time and think about it and meditate on a situation before we instantly react. Now, I'm talking to myself as much as anyone else. I have a very Italian temperament, and I can be quick in my actions and reactions. It gets me in trouble sometimes, believe me. But I'm learning. There's this beautiful quote, and you've heard it in different ways, but I did a little research. I wanted to know where it came from, and it's from St. Augustine. Mickey and what's going on over there? You two seem confused, like something's happening. Are you okay? You can hear me?
We're fantastic, and we are just looking at time, and we're sending you a chat to let you know at what time we would give you a 5-minute warning.
Just do this, okay? We're going to be okay. I just thought, what, they can't hear me? Okay, we're going to go back. So St. Augustine in his letter, and this is the letter 211, and this will be familiar to you. The exact quote is, with love for mankind and hatred for sins. With love for mankind and hatred for sins. The phrase has become love the sinner and hate the sin. Or, as Mahatma Gandhi said, hate the sin and not the sinner. It gives us real guidance, I believe. Of course, Jesus taught us to love our enemies. Can we do that? Love our enemies. Bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use and persecute you. Jesus gave that example to us on the cross, didn't he? The quote from Jesus goes on to say, "We are all the children of God in heaven, every one of us. God makes the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends the rain on the just and the unjust." There's no discrimination. It's like the sun shines the same on everything, as does God's love. So we're moving on. I'll be quick, but I want to get it all in. It's important. To the understanding. And understanding comes from taking the point of another's view. You've heard the saying, you can't know unless you've walked in that person's shoes. It's like that. So in order to accomplish this, we try to look at things from another point of view. It's sometimes so difficult we can't even imagine what someone could be thinking. But if we're able to expand our consciousness to just one person, then we're twice as large in our thinking. And if we can do that ever more to hundreds and thousands, then we're really thinking big. We embrace so many points of view. There's some space in our lives for all the voices, Now, I want to read something because someone sent this to me after we had a conversation, and I think it's so illuminating. I put this in at the very end, which of course made my talk a little bit longer, and maybe we will end there, but let's see. So this is, you've all heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, right? This paper is his explanation of a poem, and that poem was on to see God's face everywhere. So this was the explanation after the poem, why he wrote this poem. And he says, in Plum Village, where I live in France, we receive many letters from the refugee camps in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, hundreds each week. It's very painful to read them, but we have to do it. We have to be in contact. We try our best to help, but the suffering is enormous, and sometimes we are discouraged. Who hasn't felt that way? It is said that half the boat people die in the ocean. Only half arrive at the shores of Southeast Asia, and even then, they may not be safe. There are many young girls, boat people, who are raped by sea pirates. Even though the United Nations and many countries try to help the government of Thailand prevent that kind of piracy, sea pirates continue to inflict much suffering on the refugees. One day, we received a letter telling about a young girl on a boat who was raped by a Thai pirate. She was only 12 years old, and she jumped into the sea and she drowned herself. When you first learn of something like this, you get angry at the pirate. You naturally take the side of the girl. As you look more deeply, you will see it differently. If you take the side of the little girl, then it's easy. If you only have to take a gun and shoot the pirate, but we can't do that. In my meditation, I saw that if I had been born in a village of the pirate and raised in the conditions as he was, there's a great likelihood that I would have become a pirate. This is taking the view of another person. I am hundreds every day. And if we educators, social workers, politicians, and others don't do something about the situation, in 25 years, a number of them will become sea pirates. the conditions of life. If you or I are born today in those fishing villages, you may become a sea pirate. If you take a gun and shoot the pirate, all of us, to some extent, are responsible for the state of affairs. And then he writes this: after a long meditation, I wrote this poem. In it, there are three people: a 12-year-old girl, a pirate, and me. Can we look at each other and recognize ourselves in each other? So, as I said, when Barb contacted me, I thought, we were all very much touched by the death of George Floyd, the black man who had his throat closed by a knee hold and suffocated. But we are George Floyd, and we are the police officer that did that, and we are ourselves. We are also all the people that rioted after that. So how do we live in this world and find peace, and also give up our judgment and help to be effective in the world and love? One of your mission statement is love. That's very important. So Anayat Khan says, wouldn't it be wiser to exercise self-restraint and self-control? We could see how that would have done some good in that situation. Politeness, kindness, sympathy, and graciousness. A worshipful attitude towards God, the creator of all things. And in that way, we realize we're all God's children, both the good and the bad. It's like we arise and we act from our conditions. All of us do. Not just the policeman, not just George Floyd, not just whoever. We see it, not just our politicians. We arise from the conditions of which we were born and which we believe in. So where's your belief? Where do you put the value? In what do you trust is very important. It's not going on very much longer. Stick with me. We're moving on to forgiveness. It is love that gives birth to hope and patience and endurance and tolerance and to all moral principles. All kinds of kindness and beneficence take root in the soil of a loving heart. Generosity, charity, adaptability, and accommodating nature. Even renunciation of one's limited thoughts of oneself and others are the offspring of love alone. The great and the rare chosen beings who for ages have been looked up to as an ideal in the world are the possessors of hearts kindled with love. All evil and sin come from lack of love. So we see that when evil and sin arise, it really, there are fantastic volumes written on it. In psychology, there are movies about it. It often comes from lack of love. Very often the lack of love of mother. Mothers have such a great role in this world. I'm really very near the end. Be patient. And then in the words of Jesus, I love this so much, I remember this frequently in my own life. Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Again, arising from someone's conditions. Lord Buddha says this: in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of the things not meant for you. So in this time, we have to think, what is meant for us to do? What is mine to do? Maybe it's to do nothing. It's to pray. It's to smile. Behind your mask, make sure your eyes smile at people. Steve Maraboli, who's a kind of an inspirational speaker, says this: you'll drive yourself crazy trying to control something that isn't yours to control. Let go. Free yourself. Allow your mind and energy to focus on something positive, to build something beautiful. So while the world may seem to be destroying itself and going to hell in a handbasket, I would say, bake a beautiful cake that you serve to others. Take some beautiful cupcakes, maybe to a neighbor. Plant a beautiful garden so others can appreciate it. Be kind, be gentle. Remember to do that for yourself as well, because if you do that for yourself, then you can give to others most honestly. So I would say this: I wrote this to someone in our circle that had written to me, who was troubled by the political situation of the time. And I said to this person, instead of feeling confused, angry, or helpless, do something productive. Again, build something beautiful. And these were the things that I advised. In some instances, the most productive thing is to go within, to meditate mindfully, to look at things from another point of view, to deepen our perspective. And I also said, if it's about the political situation, encourage someone to register to vote, or help people fill out absentee ballots, or drive them to the voting locations in November. Make sure you're masked up and safe, but help people make choices. It doesn't matter who they're voting for. It does matter that they're making their voice heard. One of the things that I know helps me, and this I did through the Tibetan organization, I was in India with the refugee camps, and there was so much that needed to be done. I had to deepen my intentions. And so there were a lot of people around me, and a lot of people, especially in the local community, that were willing to offer support. But also find something that speaks to your heart and offer financial support to those groups. American Friends Services that are activists for peace, other groups that are doing wonderful things. But contribute your support to those people that can give voice to your concerns and your aspirations, then you don't feel so hopeless. And it doesn't matter that you give a lot, give a little bit. A little bit. We built a whole wing to a monastery for monks by one person in this community that said, if I write to all, he was a business person, if I write to everyone that are our customers and I ask them to give $5, we can do it. And we did it just through $5, $5, $5. A little bit can go a long way. And just offer that support if you can. And mostly it's important to be kind and be thoughtful and to pray and to love. Mother Teresa, who I had the great opportunity of meeting in this lifetime in Calcutta, did a little work there with her. She would always say, we may not do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Thank you. I hope this was of benefit.
Wow, Stephanie, I think we are spellbound. There's this, I feel, and I'm going to speak for others, whether I should or not, this kind of peace and calm that I feel just kind of descended on us like a soft little blanket. It was just a gorgeous, loving filter through which to see our circumstances. Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
To take and put ourselves in the shoes of the policeman in Minneapolis is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And to even try is a really great exercise. Mm-hmm. So, wow, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Wow. All right, so we will then move on into, well, actually, we have just a little bit of time. I would like to, with everyone's permission, open it up to see if anybody has anything that they would like to share, because we did get some comments last week that it's nice to be able to hear from people. And so rather than just move on through an agenda, I'm feeling led to just open it up and maybe take 5 minutes or so and see what people would like to say about that. So anybody, just unmute yourself if you would like to add a comment or ask a question, please do that.
Me.
Maria, yeah, please.
I like to tell you that our speaker, first of all, is beautiful. And secondly, I would like to see the Dutch face. She's from my country and never saw her. That's all.
Thank you, Maria. Other comments that anybody would like to make? Any questions?
I have a
Oh, good. Please.
Is that the Dutchman?
Safi,
I have a
are you
short.
still there? And Ali Khan, are you still there? Can you say something? Unmute yourselves and say something.
Goedemorgen Maria, met Ali-Chan. Dag Maria. Prima, dankjewel. Hoe is het met jou?
Maria, do you speak Dutch? Because I think he's speaking to you in Dutch.
Ja, hoe gaat het?
Met mij gaat het prima, dankjewel Maria. Hoe is het met jou?
Je bent ook welkom. Hoe gaat het in Nederland?
Oh,
Het is
wonderful.
prachtig weer.
Hebben we meer
prachtig weer.
over de COVID-19 than we do. So waar woon jij?
In Roosendaal, Maria.
Ik ben van Tilburg, Brabant.
Ik ben ook een Brabander.
Oh,
Leuk,
goed.
Brabanders onder elkaar.
Brabanders zijn leuke mensen.
Zo leuk.
Leuk te ontmoeten. Tot volgende keer.
Graag. Thank you very much, Maria.
You're welcome. Bye.
You know, this message is such a beautiful message, and just like our two Dutch friends are speaking in a language that we don't understand. Well, I don't, but the same message of love. And I listened to church while I was miles in the woods today, an online church, and it was a different from a different angle. It was used a lot of verses. It said the same thing that Nuria said in different words, and so the teaching exists from all different angles, and it just you know, we are love. There is love, lover, and beloved, and we're all one, no matter who's speaking the truth. And I just always enjoy and am blessed by listening to this person, and I want to hear more. And I'm so grateful for you know, to see some of my Sufi friends online today. And I mean, it's so great to see you guys. Love you so much. And you know, I thank you for coming to our Center for Universal Oneness today. You know, we are you know, just happy to see your faces, and you know, y'all are welcome to come back, aren't you? Even if Nuria's not here, because we thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was beautiful. Who else has a comment or a question? Karima, please.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Nuria. Your wisdom and amazing heart and soul, and how authentic you are means so much. This talk really needs to be shared all over, because I think you hit the quintessence of what's needed. So bless you and thank you. All love.
I'm so happy to see you after all these years, Karima. I miss you, but I always feel you near. You're in my heart always. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put it on the website. We'll share it.
Good.
And I think I'll be able to get the video too, right, Mickey?
Oh, sure.
Yes, we're recording.
We have a saying from the Dalai Lama that I think is really massively appropriate, and it's about forgiveness. It would be much more constructive if people tried to understand their supposed enemies. Learning to forgive is much more useful than merely picking up a stone and throwing it at the object of one's anger. The more so when the provocation is extreme. For it is under the greatest adversity that there exists the greatest potential for doing good, both for oneself and others.
Yeah, what is that thing that's pushing and niggling you and really getting in there, and you just want to justify whatever you're feeling? That's the thing that's going to teach you the most.
Ah. Jim, I think you had a comment. Is that correct?
I have a poem to share,
Okay.
triggered by some of the things Nuria said. The title is Born in the Light. You came here from cover its brilliance. The light can be hidden only for so long. When you stop trying to be someone, your light will burst forth. Then all will see the beauty you are. Let that beauty you are do what you do. No longer can you hide the bloom and the thorn. The fragrance of your love to show importance is all you really need or have to show. Sham says, here is your diploma. You have graduated. Now grow.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jim, for sharing that.
And Jim, I should say, is our resident retired Episcopal priest. So
Oh.
we're very happy to have his words of wisdom and sermons, so to speak. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Greg?
And Greg, I think you had your hand, looks like you do still have your hand up.
Yeah, I did. Sometimes when I hear our sermons, I like our church. I like what people say, but sometimes it seems like we're too internally focused. Like let's be at peace with ourselves. And I just wonder, and maybe it's partly with myself. I don't feel like I take enough action, and it feels like sometimes our practice moves us more towards inaction than action, more towards focused on our own navels than focused on the outside world. Does anybody else have that feeling, or is it just me? Is it just a product of the fact that I don't do enough, or just throw that out there?
Anybody want to jump on Greg's question or comment?
I do. In SQ21, there is a focus first on yourself, and you then use that focus to broaden out into the rest of the world. And so there's both a interpersonal and then an intrapersonal and then an interpersonal way of looking at things. And I hope that we move on to that in the next time, given what's been happening to us now. So yes, I agree with you. I think we do need to focus more externally, and I hope we do that. Yes, Stephanie.
Stephanie, please.
You're unmute.
There's a really beautiful story, and I would suspect, Greg, if you're asking the question, you're already there. So let me just say that. But there's this beautiful teaching in Buddhism, and it says you're at one end of a football field, or there we would say a soccer field, and it's covered with very sharp tacks sticking up, and the idea is, how do I get to the other side of that field? Well, one could take and pick one tack or groups of tacks up a little bit of time to make a path. And the Buddhist teaching says, or you can put really good soles on your shoes that will allow you to cross over. And so, in a sense, that's the answer to your question, is that when we work on ourselves, we become the ability to help serve others and to do some good without worrying about any harm that might be inflicted upon us. We become strong, you know. Does that make sense, Greg?
Yeah, sure it does. It absolutely does. It's just, I know, knowing our history, in the early part of the 18th century, 1800s, there was real problems in this country with alcoholism and child abuse, and men who were in charge were very irresponsible. And there was a religious awakening, and that religious awakening lasted for a long time. It led to, the child labor laws. It led to public education. All that came out of our religious traditions. And then now it doesn't seem like our churches and our religious traditions are getting the job done. I don't know. It's kind of a frustrating thing for me to see.
Well, you ask yourself, what can you, like I said, is there some small way that you can be effective? Just it seems that your kindness and your consideration goes a long ways towards that. Maybe that's your gift. Maybe it's like our friend Surkar that retired from the American Friends Services. His whole life has been dedicated to peace activism. I see our friend Alan has come from Australia, and I know that your music is that gift. So everyone has something. I asked another group that I'm involved with, what's your gift and how can you give it to the world? I've lost a lot of, I don't have a lot of faith in big organizations or even big governments. I think small groups of people at the grassroots, this is just me, because I have found it effective. We can move mountains with our love and our passion. And it's hard to wait for someone else to sort of catch up maybe with our ideal. If we're living an ideal, if we have an aspiration, then, take action, do something. And it can be, like Mother Teresa said, we may not do great things, but we can do small things with great love. It's the most important thing.
Beautiful. What you just said helps me understand that I have some control, some power, some personal powers. I can make some kind of difference. I don't need to be Gandhi. I can be Mickey and still put a ripple in the ocean. So that helps me. Thank you for that, Stephanie.
And you do put a ripple. When we talked on the phone or we were texting, your warmth and your, just your embrace of whoever I was so evident to me that you make people feel that way. That's so important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. All right. So I would love for us to just keep communing. This is fabulous. And we have some time frames to honor. So thank you so much, everyone, for your comments, your questions, your wisdom. Stephanie, thank you. What you shared with us was just so beautiful. It created a wonderful shift, a very necessary shift. So thank you. And with that, we will move back into the rest of our service. And whoops, so sorry. Let's just move on down the road here beyond that. And we have now reached the time in our hearts and in our service where we look around and we say, thank you for all that we have. It is so maybe human nature to look at what we don't have. And this is our time to really focus on the goodness in our lives and to understand who we are, as Stephanie pointed out, and what we can contribute, and to take those blessings and to manifest them into the world. So we acknowledge all of our privilege, we acknowledge all of our blessings, all of our gifts, and with a heart full of gratitude, we say the following prayer. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am joy-filled and grateful. And so, speaking of being joy-filled and grateful and blessed, we know that we have opportunity to tithe back or give